the film deals with addiction and people who had been through that or had family members currently going through that, and the little bits that they were able to add to the story to make it feel even more realistic and add a third dimension to some moments that needed it, and a bit of their lives and a bit of who they are, really seeped its way into the film. So it was really cool, like on set. You want to have a super clear vision as a director, but you also want to always have your ears open, listening for other people and their ideas, because God can walk through anyone around you, even if it's just a PA, who's there to get you your coffee. If that, our sort of thing was like best idea wins, and so that keeping a very clear vision, but like keeping very open minded to see the way that God's going to work is really key, I think.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Christ and Coffee podcast. My name is Dr. Hike, and today we have the talented filmmakers and the team behind Cross Purpose Productions, David Alford and Joseph Stam. Listen to their inspiring story of how they went from the stage to the big screen. We'll hear about their movies, Cross Purposes, Royal Ashes, and their latest project, Searching for the Elephant. We also get insights into upcoming projects, and we hear so much about their faith and how God brought this all together. But before we begin, I would like to share with you our verse of the week, which comes from Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. With that said, please grab a cup of coffee and enjoy this Christ-centered conversation. Welcome, guys, to the Christ and Coffee podcast. How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Doing good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you on. I just watched your movie, Searching for the Elephant. It was really cool to watch, and it's kind of surreal to see you guys in person, especially you, Joseph, or Jason, as you were playing. Yeah, it's surprised to see you without a neck tattoo. That's definitely for sure.
Yeah, it was funny. I was wearing it for so long, and I had joked with some of the cast and crew. I was like, if you guys get this somewhere on your bodies, if 9 of you get it, I'll get it as well as a real tattoo. And right off the bat, 6 of them said yes, and I went, "Oh, I was joking."
Panicking after that,
So I never brought it up again, and it never happened. But no, that was fun to apply every day. Yeah,
that's great. I have a very serious question that I ask all my guests before we start. How do you guys drink your coffee, if you drink coffee?
Ooh, I actually have just recently become a coffee drinker due to peer pressure of those around me. And so I used to just go for like super sugary, frappes and things like that. But I've actually really enjoyed just some house blends, just some black coffee recently, especially if I'm eating something sweet. I like to balance it out with a little bit of something bitter. So yeah, I'm a new coffee connoisseur, I guess.
Yeah, I'm tea. I just do herbal teas. Coffee's not really my thing. I just never picked it up. I thought I would do it in college because everyone does.
Yeah.
And I ended up drinking sodas, but never switched over to coffee.
All right, you can't be on the podcast. You're out.
I'll be on the next podcast. Sodas with Christ.
Yeah, that's my other podcast I have.
Yeah. Put me on
Coke,
that one,
Coke and Christ. Wait, that doesn't sound right.
Oh, that sounds wrong.
Yeah. No, let's stick with the coffee drug. Yeah. So I mean, you're pretty young though, right? Joseph, how old are you?
I'm 21. Gonna turn 22 soon.
So you're right at that age where I started drinking coffee too, and yeah, I think that's the way to go. But it's a double-edged sword. Now you can't drink bad black coffee once you go, but it's the way to go because it is superior. It's like a fine wine once you have the good coffee blends that are black.
It really is. Yeah, I agree.
That's amazing.
You'll get there one day. When you grow up,
when I get old enough, I'm going to drink coffee too.
All right.
Yeah, no, it's I'm definitely addicted to it. I mean, I'm almost blaspheming every week on the podcast where I'm identifying Christ with the coffee. So yeah, but it goes hand in hand. So how did you guys meet? Because you guys, this is not your only movie you've done together. You've done quite a few projects, right?
No,
Yeah.
I moved to this region where we're in Southwest Virginia. I moved here about 17 years ago, and my family met Joseph's family because we're all homeschoolers, and so our kids got together a lot growing up. So I've known Joseph since he was about 6 or 7 years old because he has been part of our family, kind of by extension, and our kids have interacted with him over the years. But I didn't start doing movies till about 2019. I'd been working in professional theater, doing that's here in the area. I was doing a lot of theater work, but decided to write a script for the stage. And by the time I was halfway through the script, I'm like, this isn't gonna work for a stage at all. Maybe it would work for a film, and I'd never done one before, but I just thought I'll try it. So I asked around some friends who I knew had done a little short film together and just asked if they might be willing to help me with this. They read the script and loved it, and we had a whole crew put together of people here from the area. And so I needed a 16-year-old boy to play someone dying of cancer, which is a pretty tough call. So I put out a casting call and auditioned about 25, 30 kids, and Joe was one of them. And he won that role and was the lead actor in that particular short film that we did. And I haven't got him to leave yet. He just keeps coming back in the door. So he's ended up being in all the movies, and now he helps write them and direct them as well.
He's like your Robert Downey Jr. and your Kevin Feige, right? It's like you got to have him.
Yeah, you got to have him. You can't make a movie without him now. It's all messed up.
Yeah, he's coming back now again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do it
You thought
again.
that was it, but no, he's still around. That's amazing. So what is the difference between theater and movie scripts? What are the similarities? What would be the differences? Like what does that mean when you say you have to that this is not going to work for a theater, but it will work for a movie?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's a really good question. It's really when you're the best way I can describe it is when you're a stage director, you've got a whole panorama of images on a stage, and you're pointing the audience's attention in a direction, and they may or may not follow that. They may look at something else on the stage, or their eyes may pull over here or there, the other way. So it's a very interactive art form. With film, you literally are the eyes of the audience, and so you have a lot of control over what they see and do, and how they experience your story. So it makes it sound like one's better than the other. It's really not. It's just different approaches to storytelling. And so when it was time to make a script, I was like, gosh, this script was good, but I feel like I need to have the control of what the audience sees and where they go in that moment in order to fully tell that story effectively. And that's when the camera came in as opposed to a stage play, if that makes any sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
Yeah, go for it.
so I was just gonna say, like, as from an acting point of view, it's the same sort of thing. It's like it's the same principles of storytelling and it's the same principles of acting on a stage, but again, the audience is right here and it's right near you, and so everything becomes a lot smaller and more subtle when you're on film.
Much more internal. Too.
Much internal, yeah, and trying not to let your emotions out. In theater, you're kind of letting it go, to try to hit the person in the back of the room. But it's exact opposite in film, and so it's just a different style and technique sort of that you use, but a lot of the same foundations, I guess.
Yeah, we love both art forms. We've just gotten caught up in this film thing for the last few years and done a lot more of it than theater. Still try to do a little theater every once in a while, but mostly it's film work now.
That's great. So what made you like get over the hurdle of just making that leap to film? Because that's kind of scary. I mean, it seems expensive. It seems like I'm a fish out of water. It seems like you have to be in like Hollywood inner circles or something to even pull something off like that.
Yeah.
We knew nothing. We knew absolutely nothing. We had no equipment. We knew nothing about making a film. All we had was a script that we kind of believed in and thought was pretty good. So all of it was learning on set, basically. So we were blessed enough to have a few people working with us who had done a little bit before, and they kind of coached us along. But we set it up kind of like theater on camera because we had two cameras going. And every time there was an acting scene, we'd have one camera on one actor and one on the other. And we'd run the scenes like a theatrical scene and record both actors and go back and edit their performances together later. And so I was working with a bunch of stage actors in that film. And it was just a low budget, nothing film. I mean, it's a short film, which is usually around 15, 20 minutes. This one's closer to 40. So it's kind of, I guess, a longer short film, but it's classified as a short film. And the budget was, I think, less than $10,000. So and that was a lot of people working for nothing, they just volunteering their time and energy and borrowing a lot of equipment and that sort of thing. But we shot it over a long weekend and shot it theatrically styled, I guess, in as many ways as you can be. And for these theater actors, it worked out pretty well for them. The product came out well, and before we knew it, we were putting it in some film festivals, and it was getting selected for these film festivals, which is not always an easy thing to do. I think we set it into 15 film festivals, and it got into 13 or 14 of them, which we were shocked by. We were so new, we didn't know that was a good thing, but it was actually really a high percentage. And before long, it got picked up by a distributor, which is a company that then takes it and then puts it on streaming platforms around the world. And it's since gone out to that platform. And it was just such a little tiny thing, but we made sure the story was good and we made sure the acting was solid, and that was all we needed. The technology stuff we muddled through as best we could.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, that's why the film took off. It didn't take off because of its technical prowess at
Or
all.
huge special effects budget.
Yeah, or anything like that. It was just it all just comes down to the story, and that old saying of if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage, sort of thing. Of like it all just starts there, and you have to have something to shoot. And people saw that we did have something to shoot and were willing to jump on it because of that. And then that's why it took off, and audiences are surprisingly forgiving and are able to not notice technical mistakes when the story is that engaging, and you have their attention on what really matters and what's in front of them. And so, obviously, we don't want technical mistakes, and we've learned a lot since then, and
Yes.
and the production quality of our films have gone on to be a lot better since then. But it all starts with what you're shooting and why.
What were some of those mistakes? What were some of the big learning curves?
Oh boy. Yeah.
Script wise, there were just sometimes we were going for a laugh, which we've learned since then that the best laughs to get are the ones that happen organically for a character. And so sometimes we'd set up a situation that felt a little bit like, oh, ooh, you really wanted to laugh badly in this situation, didn't you? So, I'm thinking of the throw in the meatloaf bit. Yeah.
Right.
And it was just, we're like, oh, I don't know. But I think we've learned that humor comes from characters and their foibles more so than in trumped up situations. So I think our scripts have gotten a lot more natural and a lot more flowing. We also don't shoot for the big emotions quite as much. We find them, we work our way to them more subtly.
And I think on a technical level, we've just learned a lot more about how what you need to do in pre-production to have a very visually cohesive and stylistic, film. What we do now, what we didn't do for cross purposes, but what we do now is we storyboard. So we draw out every single shot of the film, and if it's a moving shot, we draw two photos, one of how it starts and one how it ends. And we really are super particular about what lens we're using, what rig we're using, where the camera is, and how the lighting is, and we're making blocking decisions for the actors. We're making all these decisions ahead of time, and so that you can literally, we had all these walls of just hundreds and hundreds of pictures that we drew for our last film, and you could just walk through the whole film. You could sit there with the script and walk, see
Like
how it's all going to look like a comic book.
Comic book of the film.
And then that's how we shot it. And if you compare the storyboards and the final frame, the drawing isn't super realistic, but other than that, they look pretty.
Yeah, I'm not an artist. What are you talking about? I did my best.
So
Big figures can communicate a lot.
So you're making editing decisions and everything, in post.
So what I'm trying to understand is like you're really setting up the environment to be as real and as like core to the story that you have in mind as possible. So you're doing a ton of work to get that scene to look a certain way, but there's also this element of, all right, now that we have the character in the scene that we want, let the character be the character, and let's capture the raw laughter or the raw emotion.
Yeah.
And let the story unfold, or let the personality come out.
The movie is made before we ever set on set. The first day of shooting, all the movie is made in our minds already. That kind of pre-production and planning can help your movie elevate your movie to a higher level. It's when you get up grab a camera and grab some people and just try to wing it on set, you can get something, but typically it takes that kind of pre-planning to make a cohesive film that has depth to it, that has meaning to it, and that it fits into all the rest of it. Because remember, you shoot films out of sequence. You rarely does any film ever get shot in order. So you're filming scenes from the end of the movie, followed by scenes from the beginning of the film, and you have to know where you are on that map. If you get lost on that map, you've got holes and you have to go back and fix it later with reshoots because your story now isn't cohesive anymore. So we even had that happen on Elephant. We had a moment where we realized in the middle of the setting that there was a problem with cohesion, with costuming. One of the costuming problems from one scene to another was not cohesive. A costume that Joe had on in one scene didn't look right in the following scene when he walks into a room a minute later. And that was a costuming error that happened on set. So we had to that overnight scramble and write a little segment scene in between and shoot it the next day to give him a reason for his costuming to go back to the way it was. And that was all about coherence of the story. And rarely did we have to do that on Elephant. That was probably the smallest, that was the biggest error we had in the entire shoot. But sometimes you just have to make sure that it makes sense. Otherwise, your audience is like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I would say just, having directors come in with a very clear vision is so important. And that actually frees up your crew and the actors. I can speak from an actor's point of view. If a director has a super clear vision, that gives me so much freedom to work within a creative box rather than I can do anything. I can go anywhere. Well, that's terrifying to me as an actor because then now I don't know where to go because I have endless possibilities. I don't want endless possibilities. I want to be able to work within a box that's given to me. And so being super clear and having a super specific vision as a director is actually really creatively liberating for everyone around you.
So like it's creating the proper sandbox versus no sandbox, or here's a
Yeah,
piece of sand. Yeah.
that's
Like,
exactly what it is.
And
Yeah.
everyone's working in the same direction, and that's
yeah.
key. A camera, crew, costuming, makeup, everyone's working in one direction. It's amazing how far you can go as a team when you do that.
It was cool what like the people that God brought to our to work on crew as well, because again, like we had developed the entire film of what it's going to look like, how it's going to play out, what every beat looks and feels like. But then you have all, these people on the crew and the production and even post production who have their own experiences and their own way they interpret, the script and your shots and everything like that. And people, the film deals with addiction and people who had been through that or had family members currently going through that, and the little bits that they were able to add to the story to make it feel even more realistic and add a third dimension to some moments that needed it, and a bit of their lives and a bit of who they are, really seeped its way into the film. So it was really cool, like on set. You want to have a super clear vision as a director, but you also want to always have your ears open, listening for other people and their ideas, because God can walk through anyone around you, even if it's just a PA, who's there to get you your coffee. If that, our sort of thing was like best idea wins, and so that keeping a very clear vision, but like keeping very open minded to see the way that God's going to work is really key, I think.
That's great. That's really cool. So you guys said you met through like a homeschooling network. What
Yeah,
did
so I went and the theater aspect of it. David has started a kids theater program at the Bardo Theater, which is the state theater here in Virginia. And so I had grown up doing theater at the Bardo Youth Academy, and so our families knew each other, and then I was obviously knew him through that because he was the director of that. And so then he went and started the production company, and yeah, just auditioned for Cross Purposes, and it took off from there.
Yeah, and we had a lot of homeschoolers on set. I mean, because that's the people we know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there were a lot of homeschoolers involved in that. And so my kids all had roles. I have older children. They were all involved in the productions, and some of Joseph's brothers helped. His brother helped edit our first three films. He's an editor now and working with on some Amazon Prime and some.
Yeah, he just did The House of David recently, but yeah, he's great. He edited our first few films with us.
Yeah, so we have all these homeschool kids with all these different skills and talents. Some are towards the film, and some just are off doing other things. But they were a lot of the crew that really put our first couple of films together for us.
So it's fascinating. When I was in seminary, I actually stayed with a homeschooled family at the time in Pennsylvania, and like at the time it was like kind of not popular, but now it's become very popular. I feel like every other person I'm meeting in California, Southern California, seems like the parents are thinking about homeschool versus it being this like thing that was looked kind of down upon at the time. But I have noticed that a lot of people who are homeschooled have the freedom to kind of pursue the creative arts more so than the 9 to 5 kind of 1 hour here you go, 1 hour here you go, 1 hour here you go.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's really fascinating that this kind of a studio company and then all these opportunities emerge for people to pursue this passion, because you need the time to dedicate it. I mean, like for me, like I love theology. I didn't really have the chance to really study theology until my master's, which was crazy. Like I wish like, if I was homeschooled properly, maybe I could have found my passion earlier, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a great thing about like homeschooling, for me at least, is just the way that I learned. I don't think I would have done very well in a public school setting, just because, you know, I have ADHD and dyslexia, and like I learned things in a very different way than a lot of people do. So we could kind of shape my education around, you know, the ways that I learn. And also into my interests, you know, like you were just saying. And so, yeah, I probably wouldn't have had all the time to do all the film work and theater work and whatnot that I was doing if my education wasn't shaped in that particular way. So yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, I homeschooled all three of our kids all the way through. I have one more who left, and he's a junior this year. But what we find is that you can often do the academic amount of work that you do in a public school day in the first half of the day and be done by lunchtime. Because I used to teach public school, and I've done and I grew up in public schools, so I know the whole structure. And I also realize that the amount of work you're doing can be condensed and it can be packed into the first half of the day. And that leaves your afternoon to do whatever you want to do, to explore and experience whatever you want to do and pursue your interest at a young age. And I find that's one of the big blessings of homeschool is I've got kids who want to do things and they're out in the world doing those things while they're in school. And that's really, I think, really effective, especially for boys who don't necessarily do great sitting in the classroom.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. So how do you memorize your scripts with dyslexia and ADHD? Like, what's your methodology for memorizing and getting into character?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So like lines are something that, you know, you just want to have knocked out as soon as possible and not even have to think about them anymore, because that's like the least important thing about acting, you know, is the lines. And so for this, especially for this character, I had a super like particular headspace to get to. And, you know, every day we were shooting, I was just in character all day because I couldn't, it was a pretty dark place to go to. So I couldn't just bounce back, you know, in and out of it. I kind of just had to stay in it all day. But what was really cool, what I've found over the years is when I'm acting, it's really not so much for me, at least, about learning the lines as it is why I'm saying them and where they're coming from. And once I have the subtext all figured out and I have the emotional, you know, this causes this. Okay, what's the cause? What makes me say this line? I'm not going to say this until I absolutely have to, sort of thing. And so, it going through and kind of just doing my character work, then when it gets to learning the lines, when I'm running things with people, it's really just a matter of like, I have to say this. Like this is the only thing that I can say at this point, and it just feels natural. I guess it's just I'm not like seeing the words on a page in my mind or anything like that. And afterwards, I'm like, is that right? Was the right lines? And they're like, yeah, that was right. And I was like, okay, perfect. But it's just like kind of trying to find emotionally what's happening underneath it and not saying a word until I absolutely have to. And those are the only words that make sense in this scene.
I didn't realize how freakishly good you are at memorizing lines. It's like, he's always like really got it spot on, and he's not that way with the rest of his life. So I'm just, but with lines, he's got it. What's exciting to watch Joe do when he gets into acting is finding that character and finding that person. He's played some tough roles over the years, and we gave him the boy who died of cancer, which was of course not easy. He played a boy with dyslexia, which was extremely hard, and then
Autism. I have
autism. I'm sorry, autism.
That's
Yeah,
me.
with autism. Yeah, that's right. And then he played a drug addict in this last one. And what I really appreciate about the way he attacks these roles is kind of what he's saying is that he views them as people first and their issues second. So he didn't play a boy with autism. He played a boy who has autism in his life. And he approached it with that perspective. And with that, you get three-dimensional people who have depth and richness to them because they're not just their problems, they're people who have problems. And the difference is you can play a drug addict and everyone knows you're a drug addict and that's all they see. Or you can play a person who suffers from addiction and you can see that person first. And that's what his characters do. And I think people who see his movies understand that.
Hopefully, and I'm gonna throw that back on David because I can only do that because of the scripts that he writes and the characters that he writes them that way. He writes them as three-dimensional people, and so I have that foundation on the page, and I just have to take that and keep going with it. And so yeah, it all starts on the page.
Yeah, I love that because I think that gets to the heart of my biggest critique on a lot of Christian films. Because it's like, all right, this guy's the Christian, this guy's the atheist, but they're not. They don't feel like people. They're just like forcing down a fake story where it doesn't feel like actual people in the 3D dynamic.
Yeah, that's a big pet peeve of ours. And I love, there are so many great Christian films out there, and I want people to support and go see Christian films. But I also have a problem with the ones that feel very artificial, or life is all tied up in a neat and lovely bow every single time. And then that drives me crazy because people who are watching our films who are not Christians see that and say, that's not the world I live in. I don't recognize that world you created. It feels artificial and honestly manipulative. And I think people are more turned off by Christian media that does that than are connecting to it.
Well, because then our faith feels artificial.
Is our faith artificial?
Manipulative.
Exactly. It's like, no, it's just we're making weird Christian Sunday school pamphlet movies that don't sound like people talking, or people don't behave like real people do. And so it's real important to us that we tell stories that are sometimes hard and they're sometimes don't end perfectly, but you do see God's hand in them and you see him working in a world that we all recognize in a way that we recognize. And that's our goal. We're not always successful at that, but that's what we try to do.
We try to ask interesting questions, and I think there are some really great, inspiring Christian films out there. But I also think it is really important to not always inspire. Like that doesn't always have to be the goal. Sometimes you can challenge. If you have a Christian audience, then challenge them with ideas, that they may not have thought about, or challenge them, like in this film, by putting them really up close to some people they probably would never want to hang out with in their normal life, in their day-to-day life. But you're forced to hang out with Jason and Griff for 2 hours here and understand them in a different way. And you're kind of challenged by that, so that hopefully next time you see a Jason or a Griff in your real life, because we all know them, that you maybe have a sense for where they're coming from. Maybe you have a little bit more empathy towards those people. So I think it's really important to, yes, I'm not saying Christian films should never inspire, but I think it's also okay to challenge and to deal with tough ideas and make flawed characters. Even if they're Christians, they can be flawed.
Well, and look at the Bible. I mean, the stories in the Bible are hard. They do not play like Leave It to Beaver. They don't all work out that way. The Bible teaches through hard stories, and I think as Christians we can challenge ourselves to do the same.
Yeah, no, 100%, and that's an amazing way to look at it. And you've been in Christian radio, theater. How's the industry changed over the years? Is it getting away from that, where it's like less of the high production? You could do kind of what you guys are doing, these lower production things.
It's a really tough scenario, and that's because filmmaking is so expensive. And when it comes down to money, people don't want to take chances. If you're getting enough money together to shoot a Christian film, everyone wants a surefire hit. They want the thing that they know is going to connect 100% to everybody in the Christian community who might come see it. So it becomes a business. And that's really, I mean, that's been true of Christian music. It's been true of a lot of things over the years, but Christian films are hit by it the hardest because they're so hard to get done. And so it's going to take independent Christian filmmakers who are working on the smaller budgets to take the artistic challenges and artistic risks. You're seeing that in Hollywood now. You're seeing a dichotomy. Hollywood's split into two roles. You've got the major tentpole Marvel type movies, and you've got the little indie art house movies. And right now, I think we all saw in this year's Academy Awards, the indie art house movies are competing against the Marvel movies. And those are the two categories that seem to be going up against each other because of the way that they're structured. And the Christian film industry is trying to create tent house or tent pole structure movies that will hopefully get a big audience. But I tell you, we need some indie art house movies too. We need some ones that deal with the harder questions of life and do it on the lower budget so they can actually take risks and take chances. And that's where I think art comes from. I always equate art to being something that you can put yourself into. Art has to leave enough room for interpretation that the audience can put their lives into it and see themselves in it. Otherwise, if art tells you what to think, what to believe, how to believe it, and what it looks like, and the exact message you're supposed to get, it's called a street sign. And you could just read one of those and get that kind of information off of it. But if you're experiencing art, there's room for you to see people's interactions and go, yes, that's how I feel in that moment. And that's what that means to me. And that makes me think of God in a way I hadn't thought of before. So we trust that God's going to work in the hearts of people through Christian art, then let him have space to do that. And I think that's a really important distinction between the two. And Christian films need that, I think, more than ever if they're going to be taken seriously. And if audiences are going to be challenged and find them honest, we got to move more in that direction.
I mean, because God will work in it. Like
Oh, yeah.
he will. Like for us, that was always the reminder on searching for the elephant to like try to step back and leave room for that, and not go and try to clarify everything and really get our message in there. And it was amazing to see people's reactions at like premieres and festivals and things, and people feeling like uh, coming to me and telling me things that they got from the film, some of which we intended and some of which I didn't even realize that we put in there. That I was like, oh, that's not exactly even what we were thinking, but we left enough room for them to project their own experiences onto it and for God to work in that and to get what they needed to out of it. So it's a really tricky balance of leaving room for that.
Yeah, and I love this film about the generational kind of trauma that you see, and then the generations needing each other to kind of heal. And it seems like a lot of your themes in your movies are family dynamics. Is that correct?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
really
that is
is.
true.
It's about broken families trying to find their way back, and sadly, because that's just what a lot of people we know are dealing with. The drug epidemic here in Southwest Virginia is just horrible. I mean, you can't find a family here that hasn't been impacted by addiction, or a family that hasn't been destroyed by it in some ways. And so, the idea that families can have redemption and that there's a way back when you let God work in everybody's hearts, that things can be healed and families can be restored. That's just a big message that we carry through several of our films, but this one most in particular.
It was great, like talking to different families who, in my research for the film, families who had someone who was going through addiction, or talking to people who were currently in recovery or had gotten out of recovery themselves, and just kind of hearing their stories. And they were so vulnerable and open with me. And I felt a lot of responsibility to portray that accurately, and not only me, but the people the person who played my mom, the person who played Griff, also did that research, and talk to those people to really, try to portray what this situation looks like in a really accurate way. And it was really amazing talking to those people after the film when they went to go see the film, and just
The way it touched them.
just kind of I breathed a sigh of relief that they thought it was accurate, that they were like, it showed how hard this is, and all the rough parts of it, but then also the hope at the end meant a lot to them. and had a lot of emotional conversations with them after watching the film. So that was very cool to see.
Yeah, it must be very rewarding to make that difference, and that they identified with you. That which testifies to your art form and your abilities. So that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I was impressed by the movie, and thank you guys for that. Any other future projects you're working on?
Yes, actually,
Across the room, we have a storyboard laid out for the next film that we're working on right now.
Yeah.
That's been our goal this morning, to try to get that finished up as much as possible. But yeah, we have a movie coming out that we're trying to shoot this fall. Well, it's not coming out this fall. We're trying to shoot it this fall, which means we're doing all the pre-production work on it right now. It's a WW2 short film about the White Rose movement. If you know
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. So it's a World War II film about these university students who went to the University of Munich during Nazi Germany, and they saw how Hitler's regime was taking over and all the darkness that was around them. And because of their faith, they realized that this was wrong and wanted to do something about it. And so they wrote. This brother and sister started by writing these leaflets, and they distributed them around their campus, just criticizing Hitler and the Nazi Party. And
Calling
then
people to rise up and think differently.
right, and so then protests started to happen, and they the leaflets got distributed around the city of Munich and then around cities across Germany, and so it really became this resistance movement. And the Gestapo were brought in to try to hunt down the members of the White Rose, which was the name of the resistance group that they started. And so, yeah, so these people were just very, very rebellious, very passionate, artistic young people who saw what was going on around them. And even though they had grown up in it and it seemed good,
Yeah, they grew up as Hitler Youth. I mean, this has been part of their life since they were kids. That which was like being part of a camp organization. You go camping and do stuff after school, and
Yeah.
it all seemed so harmless at 1st, and it just slowly started melding and changing. And so many people around them were changing with it. But these kids had a moral core. Their dad and their mom had taught them Christianity and taught them right and wrong, and they were not changing with the other kids. And I think it's something that all young people are struggling with today in a lot of different ways. And I think meeting these kids who held their core beliefs through all these changes and acted on them in such a profound way and impacted their entire country is a really tremendous story. I'm hoping it'll really be inspiring for a lot of people.
That's amazing. I know this is the first time I'm hearing about this, and I think this is where good Christian art needs to go. Just share the testimonies. Is this your first time doing a real life?
it is.
It
project?
is, yes. It's
How is it different than your other ones?
Oh yeah,
The
it's very
writing's been
different.
so different. I mean, the writing has been so tough because before, when you're making up stories, you can kind of say whatever you want to for
Yeah, yeah.
somebody. But when you're talking about real people, you know, you're not there. And this is something we all have to be mindful of. When it says based on a true story, any film's got,
Right.
it's largely fiction. I mean,
Yeah.
because people were not in the room. No one was recording what these people said. You just know what happened to them and you try to piece it together. So there's one is giving ourselves permission to piece things together creatively so it works out as a cohesive story. But then to fill in the gaps. But then Joseph got a chance to go to Munich and research these kids there and went to their museum and their memorials and the school that they went to and really walked in their footsteps. And he came back with a whole ton of research that we couldn't find online. And it was so cool the way the research backed up what we had already written and on the screenplay for the most part.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible that like you know, we would have a gap in information of like, okay, we don't know how they reacted to this event, so we're gonna have to fill that in ourselves creatively. And it was so amazing, like going and doing this research in Germany, coming back and then realizing, oh, that's like almost exactly what we had written, you know, or exactly what we had written, you know,
it was
creatively.
scary at times, like, wow.
Well, it just like felt like, you know, God was using it, that these people were still speaking through us in some way, you know, and so it was just very affirming that we were on the right track, you know,
it was very
whenever that
encouraging.
happened.
So yeah, it's a different ballgame when you're writing about people. You feel the responsibility. I mean, these kids were martyred. They lost their lives doing this protest. And so it felt important to us that we represent who they are and what they believed as accurately as we possibly could. But they weren't famous people. There was not a lot of recordings of them. There weren't even a lot of pictures of them because they were just middle-class poor kids. And their moment of shining glory was very brief and very bright. but there's just not a lot of records of them. So we had to find as much as we could. And the museum there in Munich was fantastic.
Yeah.
They provided us so much information we couldn't find anywhere about them.
Yeah.
This is a big story in Germany, but outside of Germany, you don't hear about these kids. And I think it's important that the people of Germany who did resist Hitler and did resist National Socialist Party, and there were a lot of them who did, even with their lives, that we hear their side of the story too. Because unfortunately, all we hear part is the part of Germany that went along with it. And I think these kids really represent kind of a shining beacon for all those people who said no to the point of dying for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're excited to tell their story outside of Germany to other people.
That's amazing. I'm looking forward to it. What would you say to aspiring artists who want to be either an actor, or a producer, director, post-production, pre-production? How do you get into the industry? How do you do it? What would be your advice?
It's really tough because it all, to me, so much of this industry is connections, and so it's so hard to break in and to have that first thing that's like that first connection leads to the next, that leads to the next, that gets you really working. And so the thing that I always come back to, in the way that we started, was just doing it, just on some level. Like our first short, you again can take a look at it. It's production wise,
Very
quality,
inexpensive.
very inexpensive. It's not the best production quality, but we went out and made something first, because no one's going to support, no one's going to get you contact, no one's going to do anything unless you have something to show them. And so it's just a matter of, even if you're an actor, just recording everything you can and sending it out, getting yourself out there as much as possible.
Talk to
you know, as a filmmaker, doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And you know, creating first, and then once people see it, then they'll go, oh, and they'll start reaching out to you, because they see that you have something here. But if you don't have anything to present, you know, it no one's gonna give you the time of day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and tell the story of your life, the stories from your life. That's something no one else can do. And those stories are special because they're from your perspective, and they can be done in a way that's heartfelt and meaningful for you. So just write the stories about your life. You don't have to rule the world with your first film. Just write about something that both is important to you and means something to you because you've experienced some aspect of it. And then talk to your friends. Just ask around. You'd be surprised how much talent is in your own community. Write stories that involve spaces in your community that you can go and film at. Go ask people if you can shoot in their restaurant. I can't tell you how many people have given us restaurants or prisons or football fields, or we've gotten all kinds of locations for all these movies, and no one's asked for a dime. They're like, yeah, come shoot, we're fine. It's, you know, come on our day, we're closed, and we're happy with it.
Yeah.
Just talk to people. The resources are out there to make any movie you want to make. You don't have to make the next Marvel movie. You have to make the movie that's from your heart. And if you do that, then people will pay attention to you because it's a unique voice, because it's your voice.
And if they're excited about this story, if they see something true in it, you'd be surprised about, you know, what people are willing to pour into it, and that you do.
Yeah, that's amazing. It seems like you're taking that element of the local theater to the movie set, which is quite remarkable. And it's not just creating art, but it's also bringing the artist out and cultivating a community aspect, just getting a free restaurant shoot or a prison scene. And that's pretty amazing. Where was a lot of the ranch? Where was the ranch located? Where were you? Is that West Virginia or Southern Virginia?
Yeah, that was Saltville, Virginia.
Okay.
So that was a great location, because that was one of those things of like, well, we're just kind of stepping out on a limb here because we didn't know about that location beforehand. So we were like, we're going to write this film about a ranch. We don't know if we can get a
We're going to
ranch.
find a ranch.
We're going to write this film that involves a prison. We don't know if we can get a prison.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that prison looked very legit. That was
Yeah, because it was.
Because it was a real maximum security prison that had closed down 8 months before our shooting. And they were like, it's empty. If y'all want to shoot in here, you can shoot in here. We're like, okay. Because, you know, putting some bars on a bedroom wall in your house is really not convincing.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Anyone in the theater.
No, it was a surreal experience actually being locked into a maximum security prison.
A cockroach, no less.
Yes, with a cockroach. And so
Wait, that wasn't a prop. That was actually there.
That was an actual cockroach.
it was a real cockroach.
He was freed after the filming was done. We set him loose.
Yes.
Otherwise, he was going to be bait, I think, for some lizard. I think we bought him at a lizard bait shop or something. So he lived a longer, healthier life because of his participation
No
No
animals were harmed
cockroaches
in
were
the
harmed in
making
the
of this
production
film.
of this
Yeah.
film.
But I forgot what we were talking about now.
Shooting in the prison.
Right. Yeah. And the ranch that we found was just a perfect location too. I mean, it was everything that we hoped
800
for. It
acres.
had a courtyard, which is something specifically we wanted for the
Yeah.
film. You know, it was just like a
It's like
pretty
a
incredible find.
120-year-old house.
Mhm.
I mean, the house itself was 120 years old, and so it had such a history to it. And they allowed us to decorate it and set it up however we wanted to. There was nobody living there,
So we could come in with production design and just do whatever we
Yeah.
want. It was pretty incredible.
and
Yeah.
we basically lived there for a month with our crew because it was basically the base camp of the film itself. So equipment and crew all were able to be stored in that building, that house, of that ranch for the month that we shot the film.
Yeah.
So you couldn't have asked for a better situation. It was all within our tiny little budget. So God provides. I mean, you just have to ask and talk to people, reach out on social media, tell people specifically what you need. You'll be surprised how much people want to help films get made. It's really a lot of fun.
Yeah, and being part of that process, and it's amazing. I mean, I'm even more inspired by like hearing all this for what you're pulling off and have done, and I'm excited for this next project. I think it's gonna do wonders. I just see it right now.
We're excited. We're actually teaming up with a school in the UK. The University of Hertfordshire is interested in doing this with us. So we're not shooting the entire film. We're going to shoot a short film version of it, and then maybe take the short film back to a studio and see if they'll help us shoot the entire production. But this school's willing to work with us, with their students and their faculty and their soundstage, and we may be going over to Europe and shooting it over there in October.
So we have a full, 2-hour film script done, and we have some producers who are really excited about it. Producers who work with Warner Bros. And things like that, but they can't really pitch us because we don't have names. No one knows who we are, and so we have to go and make this proof of concept short film first. To, like I was just saying, no one's gonna trust you if you can't back it up. You can't
Yeah.
show them what you're gonna do. So we will show them what the film is gonna look like and feel like, and a couple of the scenes from the film, and then we're gonna come back, and our producers are gonna be able to take that to them and say, here it is. This is the product. This is
Here's
what we
the
want to
script.
do,
Yeah, go.
and really, hopefully, make it on the scale and the level that this story deserves and that these people deserve.
Amazing, amazing. Final question: if each of you had one question to share with the church in America, what would it be?
A question to share with the church.
A message. A message.
A message.
Okay.
That's my question to you guys.
Okay. My biggest message right now is fear not. Our God is so much bigger than anything that's going on in the world right now, anywhere. Things may look terrible. Things may look sad. Things may look tragic. Things may look scary. Our God's just so much bigger. There's no reason to be afraid.
I this is kind of a confusing one, and we'll see if this comes out right. I think it's something I've just been thinking about when it comes to the church as a whole, is just how difficult it seems for the church to be able to find the balance of truth and grace and love these days. It feels like everything's really polarized, and there's a lot of division just within the church itself, and then in the world at large. And it's really hard to find churches that don't compromise what the truth is, and stand by their convictions, but then also are able to reach out to people that disagree with them with love and grace. And that's something that's just really difficult to do on an individual level, and then I think even harder to do just on a church body level, if that makes sense. And so that's something that I would love to see a lot more attention brought to, about what exactly, because Scripture calls us to have all of those things, and so one without the other is still not right. And so I see different churches really excelling at one aspect and then really excelling at the other. And so that balance is something that I guess I would like to see more focus in the church.
Yeah, Jesus was full of truth and grace. We're called to share the truth in love, and if we're
Right.
not sharing the truth lovingly, it's not the truth. And if there's no truth in love, it's not loving either. So
Exactly.
I'm super excited for you guys, and I'm looking forward to this next project. And it's so cool how just the two of you tag team and are partners, and creating art together, and it's a beautiful thing you guys are doing, and I hope you keep making art. And thank you for your time, and I look forward to promoting this film and also your future projects. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And all of our movies can be found on our website, www.crosspurposes.productions. You can find all of our movies, and there's links there that will take you to each of the films on which platforms they're located on. You can click and it'll take you right to them.
Yeah, but
Excellent.
thank you so much, and thank you for all your questions. It was really great talking to you.
Yes, and thank you everyone for tuning in to the end of this episode of the Christ and Coffee podcast. Have a great week. Stay caffeinated, my friends, and check out these movies. God bless you and take care.